Okay, we're live. Did you unmute? Nope. Okay. Yay,
Yeah.
we're live. Okay, so we're here today to discuss why did I already forget the title of this? What I wish I had known for admissions with Stephanie. And do you want to tell everybody where you recently committed to?
I committed to University of Virginia.
Yay! And so ultimately, like last week, we were kind of discussing like how do we make these decisions, and you know, what does it come down to? And so, what did it come down to for you when you were picking your college?
For me, it really came down to gut feeling. I had to really trust my instinct and my first reaction and what, um, without looking at all of the facts, what my first initial reaction was after I got
Okay.
all my acceptances.
And so, what was in your gut then that made you feel like UVA was the right choice?
Well, it was kind of like even from the beginning of like this whole admission cycle, like I had a close tie to the school. Like I always felt like that was my middle. Whenever I was trying to make decisions on about my application, I would call UVA to because it was just my middle. So it just felt it felt like the best match, and I just had a close tie to the school like from the beginning. And then when I went to visit, I really liked it. My parents
But
really
you
liked
didn't bring
it.
back
So
dumplings.
I did not.
I want to put that on record. Stephanie would prefer that I never speak about this again. I will
Yes.
continue to speak about this because Stephanie should have brought back dumplings, and for some reason did not bring back dumplings. And
I
because
don't even know what a dumpling is, but I will be returning to campus or grounds, sorry, grounds
thank
on
you,
in July for their orientation. So I will make sure to bring back these precious
dumplings.
dumplings.
Yes, from Marco and Luca. So you went to go visit, and what happened during your visit?
The first time I visited last summer, and I really loved it. Like we were only able to like just go outside. We weren't allowed in the buildings, but just from being outside, I really liked it. I really liked how it had a homey kind of feel. It wasn't too city like, but it wasn't like in the middle of nowhere. So I really loved how like there were like everything like that I have here in Woodbridge was right outside of campus. So I really liked the aspect, and my mom loved it. So
Yeah.
from then on, and then I went to visit again right before I made the decision, and then I was able to go more into the buildings because I know someone who actually goes there, and then I was able to like visit the dorms, which is something I was really worried about. So it really just helped me envision myself on campus, and I don't know, it just felt right. It felt like it made the most sense, even though I guess logically and financially it didn't, but I just had to trust my gut feeling. So
yeah. So when you started this process, you had a bunch of colleges on your list. What do you wish you had known about making a college list when you started out?
that it doesn't have to be all these like I guess brand like
Yeah.
big brand
I
schools.
mean,
Like
but you
it
did go
doesn't
to a
have to be
big
that.
brand school. Like we're not
Yes,
like it's
but your
not
list
UVA is
doesn't
not an
have to
unknown.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
list doesn't have to be full of those. Like you don't have to have all of those schools. Because I started off, my list was pretty heavy, and then I had like eventually I had to narrow it down because I realized like I really don't need all of this. And it's like it's really easy to fall in love with every single school that you look into. Because you're looking at all the good stuff about the school, and you're like, okay, I could go there, I could go there, and you try to like mold yourself to fit into that particular school just because it's that school. But then I had to like sit back and realize, okay, what do I actually like? Like what it
Yeah.
fits me right now. What do I not have to mold myself to fit into?
Yeah, and I think one of the things, I mean, I met everybody after y'all had come up with your list, and I feel like if I could go back, I mean, obviously I probably would have started a lot earlier, but going through and figuring out what do you want out of a college, like, and last week when we were on with admissions mom, we were talking about like geography. What do you want? Like how far are you willing to travel? And especially if you have parents who do not have a lot of money looking out of state and at the travel cost is going to be a huge deciding factor, right? So because having tuition and a loan that you can pay back later is going to be very different than paying for plane tickets and bus tickets and, you know, cars and stuff now. So that was one thing. And then I think for me, one of the things that I was talking to somebody about today is like, if you're doing pre-med or if you're doing pre-law or you're doing any of these big fields that have essentially low retention rates, like you might change majors, you need to have a college that you're going to feel comfortable at, even if you change your major, as opposed to a college that you're just like, okay, like this is great for this particular major, but that's not necessarily the best for me. So I think that's one thing is, you know, a lot of students get into like, I hear about this name, this college seems really cool. Every college is supposed to seem cool. They're not going to not seem cool. And like every college is going to sell you on something different. So you have to kind of have a sense of like, what do I want and what am I looking for and at what cost?
Yeah, and that could be a hard question to answer. Like you would think it would be easy to answer, but a lot of people don't really realize what exactly they want out of their college experience because they're trying to make themselves fit into these different schools.
Yeah, we're going to get back to fit in a second, but what did you want out of college?
For me, I wanted to expand more my leadership, and because I realized that was a common theme throughout everything that I've been able to do. I have a lot of confidence. I wanted to use that and expand it more on a greater basis. I wanted to have the opportunity to travel abroad. I love traveling and being around other cultures and languages. So that was really important to me. What else? I had so many things. I had like so many different like minor things. I really love like mentorship type things. I love being like someone's big sister, or like giving advice to other people. So that was pretty important to me too.
Yeah. So, and then we talked about fit before we got on here. We talked about fit multiple times throughout the season. What was your conception of fit before you started this process? And what do you wish you had known about fit since then?
So in the beginning, I would say like fit really had to do with like the numbers.
What do you mean?
If like GPA, if like your GPA matched up with the school's average, you know, your testing, that to me was kind of like fit.
Rankings? Were rankings part of your factor?
It ties in with the academics. If like I would fit in academically, if it's too much of a reach, or you know, that to me, that's what I kind of looked at for fit, because it was really hard to tell, because it's not like we could like easily go to campus, or you know, it was really hard to figure out those other aspects. So I just kind of leaned on those numbers that were concrete in there. But now I would say what I did with like UVA, that's what I would consider like fit as well. Like actually going to the campus, feeling it out. And then I think talking to the like specific students and outside of like, you know, because, you know, they have their students that are like student representatives. I like to talk to students who are outside of that, because of course,
you don't trust. You have this like
student.
inherent distrust.
So I'm just like,
like
I kind of trust y'all. I might talk to you guys, but at the end of the day, I want to talk to just a student there that I see on social media. So, you know, talking to those people helped out too. So.
Okay. So what do you feel like when you didn't have an opportunity to tour, how did you find ways to tour without going on campus?
For me, the virtual tours did not do it for me. Like I did all of them, but I was like, you're saying a lot of words and showing me a lot of pictures. I don't know. For me, I couldn't really get a sense of what the campus really looked like. So like, I would go like on like Google Photos, kind of was a little bit easier, because then I could kind of place where things were. And then the information sessions for me were the most valuable thing. I did, I think, close to 30 information sessions. And I had like a Google Doc where I had like the name of the school all the information that I had gathered on the internet and all the information that I didn't know and that they had told me. So I think the information sessions were a lot better for me than I guess the tours. I think I was like kind of thinking that I would worry about tours after I got accepted, which wasn't right. Like I should worry about it beforehand so that
I can get that some fit. Students that are never going to go on a tour. Like they just don't have the capacity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what about the information sessions really helped you? Like what aspects that admissions officers were talking about really helped you kind of make decisions about like who should be on my list, who should not be on my list?
Well, first off for me was basically kind of like my first impression of the people who are presenting. Because like some schools, I was in a presentation, I was about to fall asleep. And I was like, oh, no, this is so boring. And then some other schools, they were like asking us questions. We were doing polls. It was really interactive. And I could tell that the person really believed what they were saying. Second, I really liked this, like the particular schools did this. They like broke down like what their curriculum kind of looks like. And what like your first year would look like, and then your second year, third year, and fourth year. That really helped me because that wasn't something that I was looking too much into as far as curriculum. I was more looking at the numbers, so I appreciated looking at that. So much information. Oh, financial aid and how that works if they're like need-based or if there were like merit scholarships.
Need-based, merit scholarships.
So that was something that, you know, they talked about, and I was like, okay, I'm going to write this in my Google Doc.
Tuition? Did you write the tuition down?
A lot of the information sessions didn't actually put tuition. No, they didn't.
Do you wish you had written tuition down?
I had tuition down from Google. I used the Google one. I don't remember any schools having it in their presentation because I guess they didn't want to scare us off. So they just had that financial aid slide talking about, okay, we'll help you. You can afford it. And then, you know, they have all the statistics, like 70% of students are on financial aid, you know, all those numbers. And you're like, okay. But, like, they don't really explain what financial aid is and what those different, like, things mean and what you qualify for that. So it's kind of like they advertise it in a way where you think it applies to everyone. And that's what gets misleading.
Yeah, I was talking to another counselor this week, and it's like your EFC, your expected family contribution, is your ride or die. Like at the end of the day, like that's a number that you need to be the most concerned with, because if you cannot afford that number, then it's going to be a problem, because need base is only going to get you down to your expected family contribution.
Yeah, so, and I didn't know that at all. Like I barely even knew what an EFC is. I just knew, okay, you ASPA and they give you this number, and I'm just like, okay, cool, and then just brush it off until April.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is like you have to kind of be aware and know going into that process. If you're a junior, you can start doing a mock FAFSA so that you can get a sense of what that number is going to be, and having real conversations with your parents at like what number are you comfortable if you have parents in the process, or what number are you individually comfortable with closing at. Because if, you know, and I think it's really hard once you get into the process and you've done all the work for the application to set aside an application and be like, okay, but I really can't afford this. So going through and being like, okay, this is our expected family contribution, but we can't afford this. We need to get a college that's going to get you down to X, Y, and Z is going to be really important. Or talking to your parents and being like, okay, we can afford this, or we can't afford this. So having those conversations early, so you're not having it in the thick of it once your offers get back and you're feeling compelled, is going to really help you.
Because I was I didn't do those things because I was like, okay, if I get in though, we're going to be able to find a way. The school is going to offer me scholarships based off of my merit. I'm going to have outside scholarships. I'm going to have this, this, and this, and this. So it was like, I was looking at the price and I was like, I know right now that I cannot afford to spend that much for a year. But I was like, I can still find a way. So I still applied to all of these schools that were way over my EFC, because I was like, there has to be a way. There's no way that like my
They're
hard
gonna
work
charge
cannot
that.
yield that.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm sipping because
and that's not what happened at all.
Right. I mean, and UVA fell below, but I think that's the thing. It's like you have to kind of figure out what your parents can afford, or what can you afford, or what are you going to be comfortable with. One of the things that I felt like came in so late into our group that I wish we had earlier is like the college scorecard, and looking at what are the median income of people within your major, because I think at one point we were down to USC, right? We were down to USC and then UVA and George Mason. And it was clear after looking at the data which college was generating more income for that particular major. And that helps kind of clear up a lot of the like, should I go here? Should I go there? Because, if I think one of the things that we don't calculate sometimes is, while that median income is not guaranteed, if one college is like $5,000 less than the other college, but you're going to pay, like for the other college that's $5,000 more, it might be worth it in the back end, or when you're going through, to pay a little bit more to yield a little bit more money at the very end, because ultimately college is not just an experience, it's an attempt to get solidified for a job. What do you wish you had known about merit aid and scholarships going into this?
So many things. Because I came in under the impression that if you did all the things and you did everything that you're supposed to, you were going to yield X, Y, and Z. And that's what happened. The system would recognize that, but that's not what ended up happening. And it was very frustrating because I didn't understand why. So it's, so I definitely wish I understood that that's not.
Well, not in every location, right? Like, yeah. So like there's some locations where the merit aid was a little bit more generous than the other places, but yeah, I think, keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like I just wish I was able to not count on that as much, because I've been counting on it for as long as I can remember.
So you felt like a certain GPA was going to yield a certain dollar amount?
Not just GPA, everything that I've been able to do so far, like all my activities, all of my work. I feel like it was like, because to me, I know how much it took to get there. I knew how much, my parents knew how much it took for me to get everything that I've been able to do. And it was like, for me in my head, it was like, there's no way the system is not going to recognize how much it took to do all of that. At the end, there has to be some type of reward. And like, to me, it was like, it had to be worth it. Something had to be worth it. So it was kind of like frustrating to understand that that's not necessarily how it works all the time, especially at the schools that I was applying to. So I definitely wish I didn't depend on that as much and take that into consideration when making my college list.
I mean, I think that's the other thing is like, a lot of times, what do you say when people are like, well, like, we just need to do a better job convincing kids to apply within their budget. Like, we need to do a better job making sure that they're informed about how much it's really going to cost and apply in the budget. Like, what would you say to somebody who says that?
It's very hard to get kids to think that way, because we don't have such a, like, not that we don't understand money as much, but like to adults, a number means something else than to us. Because we've never really, like, just like in that example, like when you put something in the group chat, you were like, over like 30 years or something like that, you can pay
that
something.
Was the I was like, hey guys, I thought it was just like a fun little exercise. I was like, hey guys, just wanted to let you know, like, it's only going to take you, like, for me, I was like, it's only going to take you 10, 20 years to pay out this off. And as somebody who's been here for 10, 20 years, it didn't seem like a big thing for me. So
yeah, but for us, that's a long time because we haven't even been here for that long. So, and like that $30,000, that number means something different to us than it means to adults.
Yeah.
Like we're not in that state of mind yet. So I guess it's like you have to recognize that students are literally, they're trying to get to the best, and they're not thinking too much into price, because they're thinking probably the same way as I was, that we're gonna find a way. There has to be a way.
Right.
There's students who are doing it. There has to be a way. If I get in, I just need my foot in the door, and then we can find a way. So it's kind of hard for us to think in our mind, say, oh, I have to keep this list, confined by price, because you're like, but this is what the hard work that I've done deserves to go to this. So it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to pull back and be like, oh, okay, but this is what I can afford. But you're like, but the hard work that I've done should be enough to get me here.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times in the group I heard, like, I didn't do all of this work to go to XYZ college.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say, like, if you could go back and tell your 9th grade self, a lesson about that, what would you say?
I would say, honestly, first thing I would say, don't stress so much. Because I
don't feel like that's possible for you.
Yeah, I'm a pretty naturally stressed out person. So, but at least I'm aware of it. That's something that's good. At least I'm aware that that's something that I struggle with. But I would definitely tell myself to reel in, relax, that not every small choice is going to be so analyzed. Because I was moving, and like every step I took, I was analyzing.
Give me some examples. Give me some examples.
Just something as basic as what class to take next year, or like a test, a simple test. I would freak out over a test because I was like, I don't want it to mess up my grades, because I always like had this like concept that it just took one bad test and it was downhill from there, and that it would be impossible to go back up, especially in particular subjects that I'm like weaker in. So I was like, I cannot, like, I never let myself just be at a calm, relaxed place. I was always like intense and always proactive, because I didn't want to fall below the line and then end up in a hole and have to dig myself out of that hole. And plus, with sports and stuff, you don't have much time to even get under that. So I definitely, that's the first thing I would tell myself. And I would tell myself, like, it's like, you don't have to go to these particular schools just to prove to other people that you're smart enough. Because I feel like that's kind of the mindset that a lot of us have. We're like, okay, I need to go to the Ivy League because everyone already labels me as a smart girl. Especially when you're Black, they're like, oh, she's a smart Black girl. So then everyone in the Black community is expecting you to do X, Y, and Z. And when you don't, you feel like you're not only letting yourself down, but you're letting everyone else around you down. And then there's even more pressure because I'm a firstborn American. So it was like, my parents did so much to get here. They were able to do so much. So I have no excuse but to be able to do 2 times as much because I have more support. So there was all these pressures, and of course the pressure that I put on myself all the time. It's very like, I kind of feel bad for myself when I look back on it, because I'm like, I didn't have to do so. Not that I regret everything that I've done, but I regret how much space in my head that I allowed it to take from me, because imagine what I could have done with that space if I had just relaxed.
So is there any decision that you would go back to that you felt like you did in pursuit of admissions that you would not have done?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I
don't think there's anything.
Thank you. That was a great question. Because I always go back to that moment in Varsity Blues where she doesn't get in, and she's like, I didn't even want to take environmental sciences and AP Bio. So
I took AP Bio. Junior year, I took AP Bio, and I didn't take AP the history that you take junior, I forget what it is.
Government?
US history. No, government is a senior year. So US history, I didn't take that, and I took AP Bio instead. Don't ask me why, because I have no idea why I did that. Because obviously, I'm not going to the sciences, so it wasn't necessary. So I wouldn't say I completely regret it, because it definitely challenged me in a different way, because I knew science wasn't something that I particularly loved. I was still good in science, but I didn't love it. So it definitely challenged me in that way. But I kind of wish I had taken that AP US history, because history is my favorite subject. So I kind of wish I had taken that instead, because that was kind of what I was balancing. I was trying to take both, but then my mom was like, no, absolutely not. You're not doing that. So she's like, okay, you have to take AP Bio. So that ended up for him.
But do you feel like, so I feel like at one point during the season, you called UVA and was like, okay, I'm considering this class or this class. And one was like an elective and one was a fourth year math class, right? Did you feel like that advice of calling them and asking them what they prefer actually helped? Not like prefer, but like
what they prioritized. Yeah. It definitely helped, because of course UVA was my medium, so I called them for everything. But it kind of I already kind of knew what they were going to say. I just needed someone else to tell me, okay, this is what you actually have to do. I needed that second opinion, because I really did love this elective and I really wanted to take it. It's just there was a conflict with the class period, so I couldn't take both. And this is, of course, I had AP Calc is very important. So it was like, do I take AP Statistics instead of AP Calc and then go ahead and take that leadership class that I wanted to take, or do I? So it was really hard for me to navigate. But calling them definitely did help, because I was like, okay.
Yeah, and I don't think
something else I have to do.
I don't think you should, if you're in a situation where you're like, okay, well, I really don't want to take AP Calc and it's really going to make me miserable, then it's time to look at colleges that don't necessarily prioritize that. Like that's just
that would have been really, really hard for me to do, because that was an option for me. I could have done that at that point. I still had time to change my list. But if you had told me that, then I would be like, Jen, you're crazy. We're not doing that.
You did say that.
Yeah.
You did tell me.
That sounds like me. I was like, we're not doing that. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And I was like, if we're going over things that I was right about that you told me that I was crazy about, you said that you had to apply to UVA early to get in.
I did not say that. I just wanted to.
No. You said,
I did not think.
You made it seem like I had grown, like I just plopped down on earth and I didn't know what I was talking about. And you were like, no, we have to apply early. And I was like, no.
I wanted that security, because getting in early.
You really don't need to apply early. Your application is not ready, though. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, I feel like, and I'm just going to say it, a lot of the places that we applied early, did we go to those?
One early.
Yeah, but as a group, a lot of the places that we applied to early did not end up being
I don't think anyone in our group is going to a school.
One person in our group is going early. Yeah.
Oh yeah, one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that person, by the time we met them, had already applied early. But I think there was this pervasive culture that, first and foremost, I do not recommend applying early if you need financial aid. A competitive application is a competitive application. So yes, there are less seats, but if you are competitive, you're going to get in, right? So you can submit it, but early it depends on, and it also depends on the college. And I feel like there's no one size fits all, and we'll go to the formula next, but there's no one size fits all, but you have to kind of figure out if this college not gives financial incentives, but if financial aid packages are better after early decision. Because when you're submitting early, you're essentially saying, I'm super interested in you. So it's there's really no financial incentive to offer you a ton of money at that point, especially when we're trying to hold on to money to figure out whatever. So it might be for certain colleges that it's good to apply early. It might be that it's good to apply late. There's not, I think the one thing that happens is in our culture, we kind of look at the Ivy Leagues or like the Harvard, the Yale, I forgot the rest of them, the Cornell, which we talked to, and all of those schools. And we think what it takes to get into that school is what it's going to take to get into the other school. So a lot of the myths about admission, like you can't apply early. All these slots are going to be taken up. Like first and foremost, the legacy slots are going to be taken up. You weren't taking somebody's legacy spot. Like that's not a thing, right? So like you have to know how much of it's not that you have to know the exact number, but you have to know that there's already slots pretty much not going to you, right? And then if you are at a certain financial situation and they cannot afford that financial situation, there's only so many slots that they can afford to give full aid to, right? Or full tuition or whatever. So you kind of have to know that. And so when you're looking at, should I apply early? Should I apply late? Or not late? Then I feel like in Northern Virginia, if you're not applying early, it's perceived to be late. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, there definitely is that rushing culture. I think it's because like getting in early, it kind of gives you like a blanket. It kind of gives you a security blanket because at that point you're panicking. You're like, okay, I need to get into as many schools as possible so I can make sure that I'm going somewhere next fall. It's the most unrealistic concern
unless
ever.
your applications are ready to go, right? Like if you should apply when your application's the best. That's it. I mean, you got to a point of burnout where you, like, I just remember you were like, I'm not doing any more essays. And I was like, okay, but you have 5 more. So
yeah, I was like not having it. It was very close to June 1st-ish. It was like that
1st.
whole month.
January 1st, yeah.
Yeah, January 1st, sorry. Like that whole month of December, I was kind of like, no. Like, I can't do it anymore.
So do you wish you had taken the spreadsheet that you had, listed out those supplementals, and kind of seen what was required for each school's application?
I did do that. I did have the breakdown. I had it all written down. I had it on my Google Doc. So I knew what was going to be expected of me. Like I knew what I was doing. And some schools got taken off just because there were too many supplementals. And I was like, I can't afford to spend so much time on this.
Right.
But it was kind of like a matter of, we're already trying to figure out virtual school, and virtual school, like it was on full swing. Like the teachers were just piling stuff on. And on top of that, like you had to, at the end of the day, after being on Zoom, you have to go ahead and write these essays. And it was like, for me, I analyze everything I do. So like every word I wrote down has to be analyzed. Like every particular word,
transition word,
sentence, every transition
and then you
word.
kept on like putting in punctuation. I was like, no, that's not how punctuation.
Yeah, it was just
you were like, I think at one point you were like, no, I just thought you were wrong. And I was like, no, I teach punctuation.
I thought you were just taking them out to take them out. And then we were all, as a group, collectively, we were all just putting back in the commas.
Yeah, and it drove me.
And we were like, why does she keep getting rid of these? Like, this is necessary. Like, to me, that's like
really, yeah, because like literally all day, all I teach is grammar and punctuation. Yeah. So I was like, I understand why y'all thought there's punctuation there, but I also understand why most of you get punctuation questions wrong on the SAT, because clearly there's a lack of comprehension. But I think that's the thing is like, you know, when you're going into this cycle, you should be thinking about, okay, I'm going to probably need like a leadership essay. I'm probably going to need a service essay. I'm probably going to need a general essay, an essay that's a little bit more personal. Like you should be getting those things ready, writing those prompts, collecting all of your data and all of your, you know, your GPA and your transcript. You should be collecting everything before you start so that you're not running around trying to get things done everything should be in place if possible. And this is not necessarily always possible, but it should be in place by, like, I've collected my transcripts, gotten official transcripts, talked to my letters of recommendation before I leave for but when I'm leaving for junior year, I should be talking to my teachers about letters of recommendation and a good date to follow up and things like that. And then I should be setting the goals of getting pieces of paper and documents together in advance. I should not be waiting until the application season starts, because once you start application season, it just becomes a mess.
Yeah, and I think the reason why a lot of people wait so much is because we were still in up and down with SAT. Because
I would say there's never a year that I feel like students are organized. I would say like it was a little bit worse.
Yeah, it was definitely very, very confusing because there was like a lack of information. Like we weren't getting, like I didn't really know. It was either lack of information or too much information, so I didn't understand it. So like that whole period, like all summer, I was just trying to figure out what in the world the SAT meant. And then the beginning of August is when I started my application.
Yeah, and I think before you even start studying for an SAT, studying for an ACT, you should start getting your stuff together, and getting a sense of going on a website like Big Futures by College Board, the only College Board product that I would endorse. Going on Big Futures, looking at the GPAs, and knowing that GPA is not necessarily fixed, right? Because I think people look at that GPA and they're like, okay, it's a 3.5, right? And I don't have a 3.5. Your school might be so much more competitive that your 3.3 might count as a 3.5. So looking at the school profile, like looking at your school profile that gets sent out, you can just Google, and Prince William County, they're all collected in one location, looking at the school profile and being like, okay, how do I stack up compared to my peers, but also how do I stack up in general? And then talking to admissions counselors about, about any reservation that you have about applying to the school. Like, I only have a 3.3. I've noticed it's a 3, but know that it's a range. One good thing that you can actually do is you can look at the common data set. So common data set, normally how I find it is I just type in the name of the school, common data set, and then usually it takes me to a website. If you can't find it, it's usually because some schools don't publish it. Most schools in Virginia do have it. You can also go to SCHEV, which is SCHEV, and you can look at the data for each college, but looking at the data and saying, okay, they accepted students within this range, they accepted students within this range in particular, talking to them and being like, okay, I'm not really feeling confident or I'm feeling comfortable. Asking a lot of questions is going to help you. One of the things that you all kind of brought into this season was this idea that there was a checklist. And if you didn't meet certain requirements, you should not be applying. Can you talk a little bit about that and where you got those ideas?
For me specifically, I did not, I didn't really think that far into it. I definitely believe there was a checklist, but I definitely didn't use it as a way to intimidate myself into not applying. I'm the person who was still going to apply anyway. But the checklist is definitely real, and I've been following that checklist since I can remember.
So can you tell people what the checklist is?
Yeah. So basically the checklist is just this idea that you have to do X, Y, and Z, and then that's kind of what's going to tell you whether or not you're going to get it or not. It's just basically this list of things. Sometimes it's just the bare minimum. You think that's just the bare minimum to get in, and that you have to do more than that. But that's just.
And what are some things that are on the checklist?
Yeah. So for me, it was like GPA. My GPA had to be around that range of whatever I found online. SAT scores, but I decided to go test optional, so that obviously got taken off. Other things, APs, yeah, definitely APs. The number of APs, some and just some students who had gotten in, they were like advertising, oh, I took like these 8 to 10 APs or whatnot. So of course we were looking at that.
And not
like
all
YouTube
APs are
like
equal, right? Like an AP history, an AP elective is not the same. Like, so when people are like, I took 8 APs, well, which 8, right? Because in AP art, congrats. Like, it's not like that doesn't mean that you shouldn't pursue it. If art's something that you love and you have an amazing opportunity, then fine, take that. But an AP STEM is always going to have a little bit more weight and more power than an AP elective. Like, it's just kind of like your core classes are always going to be a little bit more looked at than your, I mean, in college, there's an example, underwater basket weaving. Like, those, your electives are not going to count as much. So APs are on the list. Anything else on the list?
For me, volunteering.
Yeah,
it was volunteering work. So I did my 8 hours.
Yes, you were at Fort Brooke for 8 hours a day.
It was.
On your
wasn't
feet.
the worst experience, but it was definitely, hospitals are cold. They're cold.
And I also feel like if the experience isn't giving you anything, and what I mean by that is not like you can't, that there's, if you're just standing for 8 hours, it's not going to hit as hard on a scholarship application as if you have to do things that give you a story. That tell a story about you. And I'm not talking about like going out there, like people are like, okay, this like new trend of people forming their own nonprofits and thinking that looks better than volunteering at a nonprofit. Like, here's what I will say. Just because a kid got in and they formed a nonprofit doesn't mean that the nonprofit is why they got in. So a lot of people will assume like, oh, they got in because they did this service work, they did this GPA, they did this, and you could do all of that and still not get in because there might be a factor that you're not considering. So I think for me, service opportunities have to align with your passion, and not just because that's just a better way of living life, but because you tend to do better when you're doing your passion. So if I, could go back to little 9th grade Stephanie, I would say, well, if you like mentoring girls who play volleyball, then maybe you should be doing service work that allows you to do that, like working at camps and teaching kids volleyball or something like that, because that's going to make more of an impact than anything else.
Yeah, because my sister's into medicine, and so that's kind of how I got kind of sucked into it. So for me personally, I didn't really get much out of it because I wasn't really interested in going into medical field. My mom hoped that I find something there that I loved. Yeah. But that didn't happen. And I even tried to get like into like the law department at the hospital, but they weren't offering any volunteering opportunities.
Yeah.
So I definitely wish I had spent time doing something else that I actually like really love to do. But I'm glad my sister got something out of it.
Yeah, you're not worse because you did that opportunity. Yeah. It's just, it wasn't the right opportunity for you. So like, I think people try to play this admission game where like, I think the worst thing is playing the admission game and playing it perfectly and then not getting the acceptance, because it feels really confusing. Like, you're like, but I did all of these things, right? So like I did everything on the checklist and then I did more than that's on the checklist.
Yeah.
And also, again, I would say, I wish people would recognize that what you have to do to get, like, people will be like, college is so competitive. It's so competitive to get into. If you are looking at certain schools, yes, but there are still more schools in this country. I think it's like 60+% that accept a majority of students. And so I think the college culture, like applying to, a George Mason, and you know me, I love me some George Mason. I'm disappointed that we don't have a George Mason person, but George Mason, I'm still gonna try again. But what you have to do to get into a George Mason is very different than what you're going to have to do to get into a Harvard. So like taking that mindset of like 50 APs over to George Mason when they're a little bit more about like service and more holistic factors is not going to play in the same way.
Yeah, it's kind of overwhelming to think about, because you're like, okay, but I don't want to, you just kind of want to give yourself every single opportunity to get that acceptance. You don't want to miss out on anything. You want to give yourself at least what you think is an equal ground when it's really not in the first place. So it's kind of hard to think of.
What do you wish you had known about the checklist? And pursuing acceptances. Hello, Cherie.
I know she's here. So for me, I think what I wish I knew about the checklist is that it's not like, it doesn't guarantee anything. Like, it doesn't mean you're gonna get aid. It doesn't mean you're gonna get the acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you're gonna get this equal ground or anything. I wish that I saw the checklist more as a personal checklist, not something that is becomes standardized to everyone. Something like a checklist of things I wanted to do, a checklist of things that I wanted to convey, things that were true to myself. I wish I viewed it more that way rather than just look at it as like, okay, these are just the things that these other people did and they got in. So if I do and I don't get in, something's wrong. That's just kind of what you're looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember getting some of their rejections back and they're like, but why? And I'm like, it might just be because they know you're not coming.
Yeah, for me, I did not think about my rejections twice. I gave myself 10 seconds and was like, I don't know. I totally, at that point, I was like, okay. Because I feel like if you get a rejection, and you did your application that is true to yourself, that rejection isn't gonna sting as hard, because you're like, okay, I did everything that I felt like I needed to do. I conveyed everything that I needed to convey. That application was a true reflection of myself. I don't have any what ifs. What if I did this? What if I got rid of a transition word? I don't have any of those.
I would have gotten. I mean, I think I told you at one point, I was like, if you don't get in, it's because of this transition word.
You definitely said that multiple times. I was like, I don't care, whatever, I'm going to do it.
And I was like, okay, girl. Because I hate it. I mean, it didn't come down to that, right? But I think that's the thing is, what do you wish you had known about rejections before you had started this process?
I wish I had known that the rejections to the schools that I obviously didn't want to be rejected to, they weren't gonna hurt as much. Like I thought I would be like this devastated.
Is that because you watched YouTube?
Hurt. What do you mean? Oh, all those videos, rejection videos?
Yeah.
No, for me, I didn't relate. I kind of separated myself from that. I would watch them, but I was like, oh, that's really sad for you. Like I didn't really like attach myself to it. With stuff like that, I know better than to attach my personal feelings to it, because those videos can take you on a roller coaster. Like you see the family, you see the person, you can feel what they're feeling because you've been in that position. So you feel those emotions and then you get dropped down. It's kind of like that roller coaster effect. But I tried to detach myself from that. I was like, oh, like I'm sure there's a school that they got into that's a better fit anyway, because that's I had to put myself in that mindset, otherwise I was going to crush me. But I definitely wish I knew that these rejections were not going to like make me feel devastated, because my biggest fear, and I think all of life, is letting myself down. Because I know that like 9-year-old Stephanie, 12-year-old Stephanie, 16-year-old Stephanie, she worked so hard. She pushed herself way past that I can even understand right now. So my biggest fear was that I was going to be disappointing myself in that way. So I felt like if I didn't get into certain schools, that maybe it would be this devastating thing. Because I remember just sitting in my bed thinking like, okay, like I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to get into these schools. There's no way that I'm not going to get in, because I'm like, my personality is, if I want something and I go for it, I usually get it. So like, getting the fact of like thinking that I might not get it, even though I've done everything possible to get it, was definitely terrifying. But
Mm-hmm.
then when it came down to it, I was like, oh, okay.
But what
And then
about the schools we had to let go of because of financial?
those are the most painful things in the world. Those are absolutely, it's hard, gosh, it's very painful, because this particular school that I'd gotten into, it was definitely my top choice, but the financial aid came out a lot later than the acceptance. So I had a lot of time to envision myself at the school.
Yeah, I always
And
say don't create a vision.
yeah, it's very
Wait,
easy to.
first and foremost, do not create a vision unless you have the financial aid package and know you can afford it, or you can afford the sticker price, like, and blessings on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can. Most people cannot. But also, do not take trips. And I always tell parents and students this, like, don't take a trip to a college until the financial aid comes in, or do not take a trip to certain locales like California, Miami. And this is like a very random one. Do not go down to Chapel Hill or Durham to go visit Duke or UNC, which are basically, their campuses just look like academic Disney World. Do not go down there unless you know you can afford it, because once you get down there, it can become very intoxicating and you're like, I would pay anything to be here, and that's not healthy.
Yeah, it's not. It's very for me, this school was in California, and I have already been to California, so we didn't make a trip, but I do remember what it was like to be there. And that's always been, I think, since I was 9, I was like, I'm moving to California when I turn 18. Bye, Virginia, I'm done with you guys. So like that, I've always like, and that's still true today. I still plan to move there and hopefully go to grad school there. So it's just, so it was really hard to let go of because of location. My mom, she had already started making her moving plans. Like, we were just thinking about the palm trees and lounge chairs that were on campus. There were lounge chairs and palm trees on campus. So that was that was hard to think about. And then financial aid rolls out, and I'm like, wait.
But then the best part is, like, financial, it's good to have the information in advance, right? Because financial aid rolls out. And I just remember when I put into college scorecard for this particular college, I don't think anybody's going to be like, which college is it? When I put it in, I assumed that this college in California would be yielding significantly more in terms of median salary. And of course, again, median salary is not guaranteed. But if I had looked at that in advance or sent that in advance, it probably, or even started with that in advance, it was just very clear who was making the most money. And it was not this kids in California, right? And then you also have to take into account for certain colleges, right? If they have a very rich population going, some of that like spread that you're seeing might be a result of like internal networking, like, okay, go to this college and then we're going to set you up with this job. That might not be your situation. So one of the things that I would say is not only just try to connect with the admissions team, but like talk to the, admissions team, talk to the career services team, talk to, if you're going to have a pre-med advisor, talk to the pre-med advisor, the pre-law advisor, and make sure you're comfortable with all of those people being involved in your lives. And ask them, like, what are the opportunities that typically come out of this? Not opportunities that are on college scorecard, but like typically come out of this. Like, where do people typically go and what can we typically expect? And talk to recent graduates of the school and see how they're feeling and things like that. So, yeah, I think it's the hardest thing is telling a student that's not going. I mean, you were like, can we go back and get it down? I was like, it's not happening. Like, I don't.
Yeah, it's hard to think about because you're like, I did all this work and I got in, and the one thing that's stopping me is finances. like it's really hard to understand that, and
It's
really
not hard
to
if you're
accept
paying
it.
bills every first of the month, but it is hard
Yeah,
if you,
but for us,
yeah, when
because
you're not
we know
yeah,
how much it took to get there. We're like, okay, I did all the work, I did all the things, and I got in. Now you're
right.
telling me the only thing that's stopping me is finances? Like that's completely ridiculous to me. I'm just like, why is like you can't that can't be the only thing stopping me. Like, like for me, I always had this concept like there has to be a way. I'm gonna find a way.
Well, and also like colleges are promising a way, right? Like, so when
Mhm.
you're on those webinars, right? Like, especially for that particular school that we're thinking of, they're convincing you, like, oh, please don't just look at our tuition because we are so generous. Like, we're very wealthy. We're so generous. We're going to give you aid. We're going to, like, they start reeling you in. And so just know, like, I think one of the things that I wish we really had done before we started is saying this college is worth this amount to me. Like, this experience would be worth this amount based on this salary, based on these outcomes, and it doesn't even have to be a dollar amount. Around this is where I'm comfortable closing out for this college, right? And then
Yeah.
also one thing I wish we had done, which nobody wanted to listen to me at the time. I feel like I'm also like going through therapy, Stephanie, as we do this, is stop applying to schools you don't want to go to.
Yeah.
And stop convincing yourself you want to go because somebody else got a financial aid package that seems really cool. Like, if you're not going to close at that school, taking the time out to do their essays, to do their application, to do the work, it doesn't make sense, right? So having a super, I think Admissions Mom talks about this, having a super safety before you start is important.
Mm-hmm.
Do not listen to the noise about like, oh my God, you should also apply here. You should also apply here. You should also have a date where it's like, we're cut. Like, have the conversations early, but do not let other people's outcomes at certain schools impact yours.
Mm-hmm.
Because then when we would go back to a certain school, I'd be like, well, what about that school? It's like, I'm not even interested. Remember?
Oh, are you talking about me?
No,
Well,
I'm talking about in general. Like,
in general, yeah. I mean, I can get the appeal to applying to like just like random schools that like you see someone else apply to, because of course you want to give yourself every opportunity. You're like, okay, if all goes bad, at least I have this, and then you realize, okay, things didn't go bad.
right. And I think starting from the beginning and saying, who is my super safety that I'm actually really interested in, as opposed to who is my super safety that like I've heard about now. So I'm not
Yeah,
saying don't have a super safety. I'm saying before the season starts, have a super safety. Like, have
yeah.
a school where your GPA is so disproportionately unmatched that it's just a no-brainer that they're going to accept you.
Yeah, but the issue with that is that
Mm,
it's super hard to get interested in a super safety like that. That's way below when you're looking at so far up. You're looking at these bigger things, so you're like, oh yeah, whatever. You're looking
mm,
down on those schools. So it's really, really, really hard to get interested in it because you're like,
mhm.
okay, I mean, I can get accepted any day. It's really, we kind of chase things that we're not sure if we'll be able to do,
Yeah,
if we're able to achieve. But
yeah.
things that are simple, like, okay, like I'll know I'll be able to get in here. And,
Mhm.
it's really hard to get into those stuff and be interested.
Yeah, and that's why, like I've been reading some research. Like, that's why I think it might be helpful to have a system that doesn't show you schools' names, right? And it's like I
Mhm.
put in these characteristics, right? But I think, yeah, I think that's it's interesting, but it's like you end up, if you don't do that, you end up applying to some super safeties that you're just not really that committed to. And that's
Yeah.
just, and that can be, it's not, and I think that's the thing that people don't recognize. It's not going to feel burnout when you're applying to that super safety the first time, right? Like,
Mhm.
the first time you're going to apply to it, it's going to feel really easy. But then come January 1st, when you've done like a bunch of applications, because a lot of students apply to so many more colleges now, it's going to impact the back end of the applications, right? Where you're now like, I've been sitting here now for consecutive weeks, and that super safety didn't erode me at the time, but I cannot write another leadership essay. I cannot write another essay. So yeah, I think that's really important to know going in. Like, I don't agree with like should have a school that you can compromise with. I think there are schools out there that people could fall in love with if you let go of the concept of going to a name brand school. Do you feel like students your age can get rid of the concept though of going to a name brand school?
Not my age. It needs to start a lot younger. Middle school. Yeah, it has to start younger. Because at this point, people who are already, I would say like maybe freshmen you can kind of work with, but sophomores and up, they're already gone. They're already on that path.
Right.
Especially if they're like me. Like even in middle school, if you try to talk to me in middle school and tell me all this, I'll be like, okay, crazy lady, I'm gonna do this.
I know.
And I'm still kind of like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely, it definitely needs to start a lot earlier.
Right. So what are some of your takeaway lessons from the season? Like, what did, like, the title of this is what did you wish you had known? What do you wish you had known? What are some takeaways?
One thing that I really realized, I'm not sure if it's too relevant to this chat, but is that my time is very, very valuable. Because before I would say yes to every opportunity and I would say yes to every application until I realized how much time and energy it takes to do those things. So now I really analyze. I'm like, okay, that's an opportunity, but I don't need that opportunity right now. So I can say no to that. So that's something that I'm a lot more aware about, which I'm really happy because it just definitely helps me to stress out less.
Right.
Another thing that I wish I had known is definitely that aspect that I was talking about, rejections.
Yeah.
If you built the right application, then that rejection isn't gonna hurt as much because you're like that was a true reflection of me. And if that's not what they're looking for, that's fine because there's these other schools that are.
Right.
Something else. Oh, that you don't have to, like, these next 4 years aren't necessarily going to be it. It's not it's not the end of the world. There is still grad school. So like I was saying, I've always dreamed of going to school in California. And my dream school, I guess, I didn't even apply to my dream school because I was like, you know what? Like, I don't have to go these next 4 years. I have grad school. So then now I'm planning to apply to my dream school for grad school. So like definitely keep it more open-minded. I like what you said about how you don't go to a school just because they're super, super good at what you're interested in now, because those things might change.
Yeah.
So I definitely think you have to remain really open-minded. And I feel like that can be really hard in some families, particularly my family. They're always like, this is what you're going to do, and this is when you're going to do it. It can't change. If you feel like you're going to change, we're not doing it. And I'm like, it's really hard for you to say right now what's going to happen in 2 years. But some families are going to be expecting that because they're paying for it. So they're going to be like, okay, I need you to tell me exactly what your plan is. And I'm just like, okay, this is my plan, but I'm not going to guarantee that it's not going to change. So definitely stay open-minded. Don't go in so hyper focused that you miss out on all the
you
opportunities.
You have to love the campus. Like at the end of the day, if you don't love the campus, like you don't want to be on a campus where you're like, okay, I'm only here for this particular program, and then you realize you don't like it.
Exactly. Yeah. Definitely. What else did I wish I didn't know?
I mean, I'll add one. Everything's not Harvard. Everything's not Stanford. Everything's not Yale. And what I mean by that is just because it takes that much energy to get in. And as somebody who has gotten students into these institutions, it's never come down to like one thing. Like it's never been like every student that I've ever gotten into an Ivy League or some of these more prestigious schools. First and foremost, I don't necessarily believe in the rankings, but every application has looked different. Like there's not a formula that works, but also I feel like a lot of the college narrative about it being competitive and you have to do this and you have to do, and I just remember, on that, Varsity Blues, she's like, and in 10 years, our kids aren't going to get into anywhere. And I'm like, they could totally get into community. Like there's still going to be 60% of colleges that are going to accept more than 50%. If you're only thinking of admissions through the lens of, Ivy, and it's hard not to do that because a lot of the publications, a lot of the media is around that, right? But if you're only looking at admissions through this one particular lens, then you're going to think it's really competitive and you're going to be doing a lot more than you need to be doing. And so doing things for the pursuit of admissions, if you don't get in, is going to be very devastating for you. And doing things for the pursuit of scholarships, if you don't get in, if you don't get them, it's going to be very devastating for you. So it's more important, I think, to have happy students who have interesting things to say than students who follow the checklist. And I say it's more important, and what I really mean is that it yields better to have, it produces more scholarships, it produces more offers, it produces more aid when students have leaned into their passions as opposed to pursuing admissions.
Yeah, because admissions officers can tell. They can tell if you were genuinely interested and if that's actually something you really love. It's very hard to fake passion. So,
and also don't be afraid to be vanilla. Like, I mean, I had one student this year, a paid client, where they're like, it's just so boring. I'm like, but you're a boring kid, like, and not in a bad way. We can't have, even Destiny's Child, it wasn't 3 Beyoncés, right? Yeah. So every college needs a diverse set of students, and it does include, I don't care what they say, it does include students that are boring and really like not the class president of everything. You cannot have a class of just class presidents. That's not gonna yield. Anything else that you wish?
I wish I had known that like these admissions officers are like actually like people. They're
not just lying to you. You had a lot of conspiracy theories about.
I still to this day I would not believe anything they say on the website. I refuse. I will not believe it. I want to talk to someone and actually hear someone tell me these things, because everything becomes so political. People are just trying to do what's politically correct and what's the right thing to say, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what they believe in. So I definitely learned that you can literally just call. Don't be afraid to call. Just be nice. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't hurt you. It's not like they're recording every phone call down and
they know you're applying other places.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't want to ask them this question because then they'll find out that I don't apply. They know. They already know. Actually, we started the season with Dean J from UVA. What was something do you remember anything that Dean J said or an impression that you got from that? Because that was the first interview that you did. It wasn't live and it wasn't taped. Is there something that was said or done that made you feel like this is a place that I could call home?
Yeah, I asked about like the SAT and their test optional policy. And she was like, we never really cared about that in the first place. And I was like, whoa, no, there's no way you're telling me that. There's no way you're telling me that. I was kind of like, wait, is she seriously saying this right now? Is she revealing her secrets? Is this like confidential information that she's not supposed to tell us? Because there was no way in my mind like that I could understand that it just wasn't even that important in the first place. Like I was like, they can put it on the website, they can say this and that, but I was not about to believe them. I was not going to give them any chance to reject me. So I was going to do whatever I needed to do to ensure that I had at least a level playing field. But when she said that, I was like, whoa, okay.
It's like
You're actually
yeah.
serious. Like you're being serious. And she like emphasized and explained how they used it and how they used it before COVID and how they use it now. And I was like, okay, I didn't know that. So the fact that she was able to just
lay it
clearly
plain,
explain that and just tell us straight out the truth, it was very reassuring for me.
So where I'm at right now, and this is, you can do this for any college. I just Googled common data set for University of Virginia. And in common data set C, you scroll down and they tell you like how many people applied, men, women, things like that. If you're wondering about wait lists, these are the people who were on the wait list. This is how many people they accepted. Accepted a place, and these are the number of students that were waitlisted and accepted. But here, down here, this is to me one of the most important things, right? So when I'm looking at the common data set, it says relative importance of academic and non-academic factors in first year degree seeking admissions decisions. And they classify everything as very important, not considered, are considered, not considered. And here, they'll tell you exactly where it is, right? And so what we see here, and this is not true for most colleges, like normally when I see a college that is like this check mark is usually over here, right? Mm-hmm. So if you look right here, it's usually right here, very important standardized test score, very important application essays, right? It depends on the school. But if I go back even a couple of years, what we'll see, let's actually go to 2017, is a common data set C right here. Okay. It's always been important. It's not been very important. And one of the things that you can do is you can say, listen, I pulled your common data set up and I noticed this. Would you agree with that? But don't have a conversation with just one admissions officer. Have a conversation with multiple, because if you don't trust one person, then getting multiple people and hearing them explain it to you will, like, they all can't coordinate their lies together if you believe that people are lying to you. So they tell you here what's important to them. And this is a signal, right? So one of the things that we hear a lot, and this is, especially now that we have a lot of people going to, I'm trying to find we have a lot of people going to test optional. We'll hear, well, if standardized tests drop, we're going to find that, letters of recommendation are going to be very important, or essays are going to become more important. And I'm like, when you look at the common data set, they're already very important. So if that is your concern, that world is happening now. So I think looking at the common data set and asking questions, and if you're not feeling like, here's like a big indication that the school is not a good match for you. If you feel like every time you talk to them, there's like a runaround, maybe you shouldn't be applying to that school. Like if you feel like you can't get a straight answer, like these people are not being honest with you, you're really not connecting, maybe that's a school that should be taken off of your list. So like one of the things that people will say is like, well, I saw that Georgetown is 93% of their applicants were accepted with test scores, and I'm not a good test taker. Then maybe Georgetown is not the right school for you. Maybe another school is better for you. Because even Georgetown will admit, like that's important to us, but there are schools that's not important. So you have to figure out what school it's important for and what school it's not important for. Any other takeaway lessons from the season?
No, I think we got them all.
Okay. Yeah. Any parting words of advice for your fellow travelers on this admission journey?
Well, good luck for sure. You're definitely gonna need it. No, it's just like
good luck.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you and say that this is the funnest process. This is gonna be stress-free. Like, there's nothing I can say to.
Is there anything that you feel like if I had done this, it would make it easier?
If I done this, it would be easier. Don't think there's.
If I had
maybe planning a little bit more. I definitely had things like worked out in my head, but I never like actually got it started because I was so focused on like SAT stuff. Don't get overwhelmed by your research, because I research a lot and sometimes there's just too much information and they contradict. So don't get too overwhelmed by the information, because that can be very, very intimidating. So those are like, I think, the two things.
Yeah, I think information sessions are a lot easier than like looking at websites, especially if you don't trust the websites. Reaching out, looking at people's Instagrams from those schools and things like that, following the hashtags. But I think sitting down and I think the number one thing I would say after this season, after having some unfortunate financial realities, is sitting down with whoever's paying for college, even if that's yourself, sitting down and saying, how much is this worth to me? Right? Like, and that might not just be, oh, this college is worth this. It's like, okay, they're doing this type of program here. For me, that would be a high priority. Maybe even taking the model of common data set and saying very important, considered, not considered, right? And saying these are the things that they're offering. How do I classify it? This is very important to me. So if a school has a lot of very importance to you, even if it's not a name brand school, it might be something that you want to look into. But also financial fit is going to be the number one thing. And knowing that these schools might promise you the world, but can I afford the sticker price? And at what point do I say no to a school? Like, at what price is it too much for me? Having that number in mind, saying it's not personal, this is just not going to be a good financial fit, is going to help you, because
for sure.
Yeah.
And definitely don't trick yourself into thinking that you like a school just because the price is right either, because that's not going to help either. Because I definitely was in a position where I was like leaning towards another school than UVA, because I was like, okay, that makes the most sense financially, because logically it made sense. And I'm a very logical person. So I was like, this logically makes sense. I can see this working, but my gut feeling was telling me something completely different. So I was trying to shift to my gut feeling to go the other way. Yeah. But it just wasn't happening. And so at the end of the day, I had to choose UVA because I needed to trust myself.
Right. And then also know that hard work is a prerequisite for college. It might not yield anything. And I would say the biggest piece of advice I would give people who are seeking scholarships is perfect grades, perfect SAT, perfect service records are boring. So you have to have something that you are doing that displays you more, as opposed to like 100,000 hours at this blood bank is an interesting story. But I started collecting, like I have a student right now, I started collecting makeup kits for girls in foster care, because I realized if I was in foster care, I would want makeup. Like, I might have to leave my makeup at home, or, I might come of age during foster care and nobody can go buy me makeup. And I don't want to ask my foster parents for. That's an interesting story, right? So doing things for the sake of admissions is usually not going to turn into an interesting essay, but doing things for the sake of like, I was really interested in that, usually does yield for admissions and helps you become a better person. Last words.
Good luck and be yourself, your true self, and we'll be back soon.
Yeah, we will be back soon. We'll be back next week. I forgot to tell you. We'll be back next week.
Okay.
And Sherry will be here every week, just ready to go. So
she's chasing someone around my house right now.
Yeah, so she'll be here. Everybody will be here. All right. Okay, I'm going to end the broadcast. Bye, everyone.
Bye.